All right, welcome listeners to Through the Sightglass, a podcast that dives deep into the fascinating world of craft beer and celebrates the incredible individuals who shape its vibrant landscape. Join us on a journey where we explore the nuances of this amazing industry and the remarkable people who contribute to its richness and diversity. Today we get to sit down with Matt and Andrew, Fair Isle Brewing. Thank you for making time for us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
So we'd like to start it off just calling where your hometown, where you grew up. You guys can either take turns or you can talk kind of over each other, but I think that's where we're going to start. Where do you call home?
Go ahead.
I grew up in Denton, Texas,
Okay.
north of Dallas, about an hour. It's kind of a smallish town when I was there, and high school town. And then I went to school at Texas A&M and made my way to the Pacific Northwest about 10, 15 years ago.
Oh, nice.
Heck yeah.
Quite a scenery change.
It is.
I love Texas, so being from Texas, it's cool to. I haven't met any other brewery person yet from Texas, so that's very exciting.
Yeah, so one of the first.
We'll have plenty of things to talk about.
One of the first of many.
Yeah, for a while here, we didn't have anyone from Seattle but me.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So
So you're local.
that's
grew up
changed a
here?
little bit. But yeah, so I'm local. Grew up, locally. Moved away for college for a little bit. Down
Okay.
in Los Angeles for about 6 years. Quickly decided I missed the Northwest and all it has to offer. So came back up here. My background is in finance accounting.
Okay.
So I studied in college, did that for about 8-ish years.
Mm-hmm.
Basically made it as far as I could in the wealth management finance world without having to get my CPA or all those other testing
Before more
requirements.
brewing, her brother's a CPA.
Yeah.
So.
It's a long
Yeah, it's a
road.
grind.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that was, my dad did that, and so I was kind of following in those footsteps.
Okay.
He always talked about it as the language of business, and that intrigued me. Thought I wanted to be in business, and didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do. Was home brewing, as a hobby, very similar story, right? With my cousin, and it's at that point too, craft beer was kind of booming.
Mm-hmm.
And then kind of quit accounting, decided I was done with it, took a summer off, traveled, and when I came back, I was like, oh, let's give this beer thing a go. So
Oh, nice.
got a job at Georgetown Brewing
Okay.
here. Started out just front of house,
Mm-hmm.
then moved to splitting my time between front of house and packaging operations.
Okay, gotcha. Does Georgetown, you're only allowed to get samples there, right? Correct? Can you
Not
buy
anymore.
pints?
They have a
Oh,
tap room
okay,
now. But
gotcha.
yeah, when I was
Wonderful.
there, it was still samples only. It was
Okay.
definitely different. Yeah.
They always pitched it well too. It's you can have samples, but you can have as many as you want responsibly. And I remember I was I
Yeah.
just thought that was so funny. Just somebody
Yeah.
sitting there probably having 15 samples and then
Yeah,
deciding.
they had a lot of regulars.
Yeah, yeah, for sample tasting.
So yeah, that was a great place to start. I was there about 2.5 years. And then at that point, didn't I always say you don't know what you don't know. I just knew I kind of wanted to be in beer, was intrigued by it, and then I started being exposed to saison, mixed culture saison specifically,
Okay.
and that's what catapulted me into this. And at that point, I got word of Andrew,
Okay,
and at
gotcha.
that time Jeffrey, our other co-founder, opening, and
Okay, wonderful.
that's what led me here.
Wonderful. I love that.
Yeah.
So Andrew, for you, what was your catapult into craft beer?
Yeah. When I was living in Austin, I met the folks, Michael and Jeffrey, who started Jester King.
Okay.
So I met those guys before they had walls on the building yet, so they were still building things out.
Was this at the place, or was it just in the neighborhood, or at a local bar?
So a good friend of mine, Joshua, that I was homebrewing with, is their graphics or artist behind the brand.
Okay.
And so that's how I connected with Jester King, was through him. So we used to
Nice.
homebrew together, and then right when he was kind of starting to create the graphics and the artwork for Jester King. And then I was a climber, and so Michael and I, one of the co-founders of Jester King, would go climb a lot on the weekdays.
Oh wow, is there much climbing in
Yeah.
Texas? Okay,
Well,
gotcha.
just yeah.
I'm not trying to sound naive.
Yeah. No, you're good.
Yeah,
It's just
so-
different parts.
Yeah, there's actually a really good, one of the better walls in the state is maybe 10 miles outside of Jester King.
Oh, wow.
So I'd go pick up Michael, and we would go basically kidnap him from the brewery. I was supposed to be getting things done.
Responsibilities, no fun.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's kind of how that, and so they kind of really put the bug in the ear for me about the brewery, and
Okay.
it's kind of been living with me ever since.
What were you homebrewing?
What was I homebrewing?
Yeah. As in styles or your favorites to do.
At that point, it's everything.
Okay, gotcha.
But then when I moved up here, it's strictly pretty much focused on saisons.
Okay.
And then when I moved up here is when I started harvesting and creating our house culture that we have now.
Oh, wonderful.
So, yeah.
Wonderful.
How do you do that?
It's super simple. You pretty much, what we did, or at least the process I did, was I took a few commercial strains that we liked, and then I went around on different hikes around Washington, got flowers and leaves, and then would just basically inoculate wort with that.
Yeah.
And then through the process of natural selection and tasting things, decided which flavors I liked,
Yeah.
which ones I didn't like, and then started creating these cocktails. And then mainly through a lot of essentially time, like created a culture that we really like, and that's the culture that we use today. So,
Oh,
That's
wonderful.
incredible.
yeah.
It's picturesque.
Yeah.
When we talked with Trevor from DeGard, we
Yeah.
asked like how you landed on Tillamook, and he did something similar where they
I
took
know.
wort to like Pacific City, Lincoln City, Tillamook, let it inoculate, and he's like, we found out that had the best atmosphere for what we wanted to do. He's like, that's literally how we ended up on being in Tillamook, and I was
Yeah.
like, that's just like a fairy tale story.
It's just so wild to me that like I know it's a natural process, but at the same time it's like whenever you can go out and do that yourself, and then like I think that's such an incredible asset to have, and to have something that's so personal to you and your brand and to your beer, like that's so incredible. So,
Yeah.
do you like change it? Does it change often, or do you like keep the same, or do you try to find different cultures to use, or keep
So
the same one?
essentially, basically 2014 is when we started like developing it, so to speak. And so we've been using it, a version of it ever since. And so we kind of treat it like a sourdough bread starter, but we pitch from batch to batch. So we're probably on a few hundredth generation by now.
Oh wow.
So it's definitely
Congratulations.
Thanks. Yeah. We should,
That's exciting.
I wish we knew. I wish we kept track of it. We could have like a birthday, but
Yeah,
we're well over
birthday for the
200 generations of our house culture.
Wow.
And so it's definitely reached an equilibrium, almost predictable state. So it doesn't really like change that much. It kind of adapted a little bit to the brewery and the different
Gotcha.
environment. And then we found out different ways to nudge it in different directions and to kind of create an atmosphere where different parts of it kind of excel in different flavors and compounds excel.
I see. So you're able to like it's consistent and controllable, but you can express and finesse it in any way that you want, which is super nice.
Exactly.
Yeah, we call ourselves shepherds.
There you go.
Right? We don't like, we're just not like controlling it. We're just like keeping it in this realm
Yeah, guiding it
through
along.
things like mash temperature, hopping rates, fermentation temperatures,
I like
when
that
we
analogy.
harvest, things like that. So
Very
yeah,
cool.
it's what drives this brewery.
Absolutely.
We ferment out every single saison that we made here is with the same house culture.
That's beautiful.
Whether it's like Rankin and Imperial Stout that we do to like, light quaffable saisons. So
Very
I
cool.
like that a lot.
Yeah. How did you come up with the name Fair Isle?
Yeah, from a few different directions. So one being, there's outside of the coast, or like the eastern coast of Washington along the Pacific, there's these cool haystack bluffs. And they kind of resemble a lot of the coastline of an island outside Scotland called Fair Isle. Another thing that kind of came from a different trajectory was we really wanted to create a name that resembled of like craft, particularly like handmade craft, and then a craft with like a nod to like pre-industrialization. And so Fair Isle is a knitting pattern, but it's not a specific knitting pattern. It's not like a herringbone where there's like rigor to it, but it's open to interpretation
Oh,
and
interesting.
evolving.
Yeah.
And then we also really like the wordplay of feral. So we describe our house yeast as a feral yeast because
I
all
would have
yeast
not
was-
caught that. I
Yeah.
love that.
So all yeast was once wild, and then we domesticated again, and we have since kind of made it wild again. So it's kind of like came from a few different directions. We really liked the name, and then it kind of fit all the parts of kind of like the IP that you need to have. So we were able to get a trademark and
Yeah.
all that kind of necessary.
That's lovely. There's a lot of, I love the thought that's always put into it. I feel that sometimes people can get a little careless where they're just like, oh, we have a brand, oh, this is our vision, but this seems very intentional. And I think that's beautiful. It shows in every bit of your process, especially with the beers that you do.
Yeah.
So you said home brewing and getting started with saisons. Do you have one that sticks out to you that you were like, this is what I want to recreate or kind of focus and gain more knowledge on?
yeah, not like I can't probably harken back to like one saison I had or one brewery, but yeah, when I first got into it, was making a bunch of I guess like clean beers for lack of a better word, like pales, IPAs, some lagers, and then guess like a few breweries I would point, like Upright Brewing in Portland.
Yeah.
Like having their beers was like, oh wow, this is what beer can be. Like, especially they have a similar ethos to us. Use a lot of like forage ingredients. Like that just kind of resonated with me. Then up here at that time, like Holy Mountain was still making a lot of mixed firm. Like Floodland had just started, so there was just kind of this wave of people just getting into this style, and it still seems so like new and exciting, and just seemed like a much more creative outlet that can go into these beers.
Yeah, I feel like it brings craftsmanship to it, which I think sometimes can get lost with a lot of the technology and innovation. I mean, now I know friends that brew at Freem where it's just pushing a button for like a 50 hectoliter brew house, where it's like, yeah, I do miss that. So I think that's important. Obviously, it shows in your ingredients. What are some of the places you love around here that through connections of people you're able to use in your beer?
Like some of the like ingredients and stuff.
Yeah, so 95% or more of our ingredients come from the state right around here. So that's kind of the one exciting thing for me about Fair Isle, and one of the reasons why we started here. So we work with everything from like really cool maltsters and farmers that we've gotten to know on the east side that grow a lot of our malt. But we also do really cool things. Like we're releasing a beer next week with sea kelp. And so we actually went on Monday and visited the farm that
Very
the sea
cool.
kelp is grown outside of Port Gamble.
That's exciting. Do you take dinghies out there to go get
We
it?
take a little boat,
okay,
yeah.
yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, and so like that connection, right? So you have this new farm that's coming up, and they're looking for avenues for their ingredients to kind of impact the local environment and the economy, and it's really fun that we get to be a part of that. So
Yeah, that's so cool. That'll be a really interesting beer. That's very exciting. Did they reach out, or did y'all find them, or like how did that start?
Yeah, they reached out to us. I think someone that works there got word of what we were doing, and that we liked, a lot of forage beer, like we use a lot of forage ingredients in our beers. And so he just kind of reached out and asked if we'd be interested, and we said, heck yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
That's
let's go.
awesome.
So
Yeah.
they gave us like 100 pounds of kelp-ish. We used some in the whirlpool, dried some, used it in
Okay, so you use it both wet and dry?
yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Nice.
We didn't really know what extraction we'd get. It was
Yeah.
like, we don't really have a pilot system. We have one brew house. We just like kind of go for it.
Yeah.
And I talked to some other brewers that have brewed with kelp to get some insight.
Gotcha.
But
Yeah,
turned out real fun. It's
Yeah,
always
what's-
fun exploring new ingredients like that.
What's the style of beer that it's going into?
Similar. It's like a grisette
Okay.
style, like
Oh,
mixed
lovely.
firm beer. So super light, like some little tartness. There's a really interesting salinity from the kelp, and as it warms up, you get those umami sea-like flavors.
Very
Yo,
interesting.
lovely.
I'm excited
Lovely.
to try it. That sounds amazing. I've never had a sea kelp beer either, so be cool.
Yeah, not a lot of folks doing them.
No, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely not.
Where did your passion for foraged and I think kind of very pure raw ingredients come from?
I think for me, just the amount of time spending on the outdoors. So I grew up spending a lot of time like fishing with my parents or hunting or being in the woods, and then in college I was a guide, so I guided rafting, backpacking, and climbing trips. So I
nice.
think that connection to the outdoors has always been important.
Wonderful.
And then just meeting really interesting folks that forage and that kind of are either small farmers in the area, and using those ingredients and just kind of seeing the opportunity that exists. And then kind of falling in love with saisons. And the beauty about saisons is there's not this rigor. You're not brewing like traditional pale or like necessarily like a Czech lager where you're trying to hit something stylistically speaking. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of room for creativity.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
how, with all that creativity, like how do you plan like what you're going to be making, or like finding new projects? Like what is that inspiration, and like how does that come about, and like what's some of the strategy that's behind how y'all release beers?
Good question. So I feel like as we've grown, like that's definitely something that's become more, I guess, scheduled. In the early days, it was like there was so much exploration of all these new ingredients and whatever we could get our hands on, what could work. So now that we're almost, we've been here around 5 years, we know what works, what doesn't. We have a lot of experience working with these ingredients, but it's just a lot of R&D, a lot of trials, a lot of steeps. So like a lot of what we do and how we think of ourselves in production is like culinary inspired. So like how can you incorporate these ingredients? How can they come through in the beer in the way we want them to? Like most of the way we incorporate them are in a pretty delicate fashion.
Nice.
And through that, like with blending, blending oak beers to maybe you want a little more acid to help an ingredient pop, things like that. So yeah, it's a lot of blending, R&D,
Yeah.
seeing
Trial
what
and error,
works, trial and error.
The fun way of fuck around and find out.
Yeah,
Honestly.
we had a series we called the Windward and Leeward in the early days, and that helped us explore. It was just like single keg batches, and it's like that was like what I was referring to whenever it's like anything we get our hands on.
Yeah.
Let's see what works, and that was a great like proving grounds to like see what would work and what we could scale up.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, very cool.
I've got one quick question. Do all of y'all cook here in the brewery, or do you guys like to cook? I feel like I've talked to a lot of brewers, especially when they're talking about the craftsmanship and the raw ingredients portion of what they enjoy. They all spend time cooking and learning. So is that something you guys are passionate about?
Definitely.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's just amplified more since I've started brewing here. Yeah, by no means am I a great cook, but I just really enjoy it, right?
There you
Like
go.
it's just fun to mess around in the kitchen and even like taking ingredients we use in beers and see how I can use them like in the kitchen at home.
All right,
That's
man.
been a lot of fun. So yeah, we've done everything from like just steeping ingredients like at ambient temperatures, using them hot side, making a simple syrup out of them and using it to prime the beer.
Oh, okay.
Just kind of the whole gamut of
Yeah.
things. And just the more you cook and get used to, using different ingredients. So like when we interview folks for production jobs, like we ask a lot of culinary inspired questions.
Yeah, it
Really,
definitely sounds
and-
like it.
Yeah.
For sure.
I think it shows intention and, kind of how focused are you. You cook as well?
I do, yeah.
Awesome, Andrew.
And some of the ingredients that we've actually used are things that we've actually grown in our gardens.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah.
Very
So
cool.
Do you guys, what are your favorite dishes you both like to make? If you could just pick one, I know that's hard. And it could be just even something as like easy as coming home and making comfort food.
yeah, I've been really into homemade pastas recently.
Okay.
Man, that's the answer.
Yeah, homemade
I'm
it's-
heading to Italy in a few weeks, so
Oh,
we're
very
like
cool.
really getting excited about pasta.
Yeah, you're getting it in. I like that.
But like we made a beer with saffron like a year ago, or a little over a year ago.
Great
Then I got like
spice.
really excited about cooking with saffron and tried some like saffron pastas. And that's just one
Lovely.
example of how it's like carried home.
Yeah.
Very
And for you?
Let's see, we did a beer with tarragon and blackberries.
Okay.
And the tarragon came from our garden.
Lovely.
Which I feel like tarragon's one of those herbs that we don't really use a lot. But a restaurant that we work with around here called the Herb Farm,
Okay.
their original chef used to use tarragon a lot. And so we're kind of reading his
What does
recipes.
tarragon impart?
It's almost like an anise herbal, but
Yeah,
it's
some
super,
licorice-y.
super
Okay.
pungent.
Pretty savory.
So you don't
Oh,
need a
okay.
lot at all.
Okay. Gotcha.
Which is also something when we look at the ingredients in our beers is like, how can we use to kind of impart something at a scale where we don't have to like necessarily use a lot. So a lot of the ingredients that we use specifically, the foraging ingredients, like are ingredients that are like super potent essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good to know.
It's very interesting, like hearing about all the different ingredients, obviously, and the different styles. So for here, the community where y'all are at in the Seattle area, how were y'all received? And like, is there a lot of people who know about y'all, or have y'all had to do a lot of education about different beer types and how beer is made? Because it's a little bit different than how most breweries operate around here. So what does that kind of look like for the community that y'all came into?
Yeah, I think from the very beginning, we knew the challenge was just getting people familiar with what a saison is. They've haven't had any experience with saisons, or they've had bad examples and have been turned off for saisons.
Gotcha.
When we focused about opening, part of what we were trying to do wasn't necessarily convince an IPA brewer to come drink saisons, but how do you get someone who doesn't quote unquote like beer anymore, but would really relish what we're doing? So that's kind of like our biggest, one of the biggest targets in terms of group of people who went. So it's a lot of education.
Yeah.
We're really hands-on here at the brewery, so we do lots of like tastes. So if someone comes in, read something about rose, for example, what's rose? Where it has cherries and rose geranium, and like I've never had a beer with rose geranium.
Yeah.
And there's only so much explaining you can do, so a lot of it's just tasting and educating. So
Yeah.
our taproom staff's really good at that. We do a lot of, spend a lot of effort and resources around just kind of trying to connect and educate people, and basically give them an opportunity to try and expand kind of what they think of a beer is.
Awesome. Shepherds of knowledge, I like
Yeah.
that. It's easy to, I've met many people in this industry where I feel like their kind of passion and flame has died out. And so then it's like they hit this plateau. They don't want to learn new things. I love getting excited and curious about stuff. And I think that's something that is slowly revitalizing in this community and industry. And it's great. I mean,
Yeah.
places like this are beacons for that, to being like, you can still be stoked and excited and do new things. Yeah.
I think as a consumer, like hearing about the beers and y'all's process and how y'all, brought things to the table and looking for the ingredients and working with different farmers and resources, like it makes me excited to drink the beer. It's not just like, oh, we just like did this, we did that. Like as a consumer, it makes me excited to drink it, enjoy it, because the work that went into it seems so much more intentional than other places. So that's super cool. Like I love that about that.
Glad you said that. That's like something that probably like most proud of. Working here is, like Andrew mentioned, 95% of our ingredients come, either from, if not from the state of Washington, they're from the Pacific Northwest. So there's just such a plethora of ingredients and like around here. Like, and we're, pretty fortunate to have some great vendors and farmers that are excited about supporting the beer community. And so like our kind of mantra is like, why would we not support them back and not use these ingredients that come from our, like, don't you, like, as you said, don't you want to drink a beer that comes from the area you live in?
Absolutely.
It's just so much more exciting.
Yeah.
No, for sure.
Yeah, and I think people like knowing that story. Do you have any of the farmers asked you guys to make like a specific beer, or maybe have any of the taproom regulars asked you to make a specific beer, and has that come to light?
I think definitely. Like we get.
I mean, I hope someone said amber and you guys did something fun and funky with it. I just think that'd be a blast.
Ambereth?
Amber.
Amber.
Like amber ale. Yeah.
We do get people coming in here asking for an amber ale,
Yeah.
but
One of our regulars brought us with the shiso.
Oh, okay.
His wife's Japanese,
Uh-huh.
and so they grow a bunch of shiso, and they use that a lot in their cooking. And he's like, "You guys should do something like this."
Okay. Sorry, I don't know what shiso is. Do you mind explaining?
It's akin to what we think of like a Japanese mint or basil.
Okay, gotcha.
So lots of sushi, kind of like either like topping or sauces, but a lot of people almost, if you're kind of in your mindset, like almost just replace mint or basil with shiso.
Okay, interesting.
But there's like so many different types of shiso, which is like, so once you find an ingredient that you're excited about, and then we learn that there's like all these different varieties. So like Korean shiso is like bubblegummy, fruity.
Wow.
Red leaf shiso is more like spicy, herbal. It like reminds me of like chewing like big red gum from like when I was a kid.
Interesting.
Britain shiso is another one that's like kind of more fruity. So like, I feel like every year, like every like 6 months or so, there's like this new ingredient that we get super excited about, and how can we incorporate it? And shiso leaf is definitely that right now.
That's lovely.
That's so wild. What is one of the beers that y'all have it in?
We have Codera on tap right now, which is with blueberries and shiso leaf. Actually, we have two. Toby is with like a really light dose of cherries and shiso leaf. So we found it complements like light doses of fruit really well.
Very cool. That's so interesting.
Super lovely.
How do y'all name the beers then?
Yeah, your beers do have great names, by
Yeah.
the way. I feel like they're either family member names, or I got them out of like some fantasy book.
Yeah, so we were from the beginning we were looking at different naming conventions and felt like all of our beers have a personality. We package everything with live yeast, so we're all live as well. And so we name all of our beers names, quote unquote. And so sometimes they're actually like a person, sometimes it's a place,
Okay.
or sometimes they're just like something aspirational. Like for an example, Madame Argyle, which is our house saison. During construction of the tap room, we were doing all the demo ourselves and did a lot of the build out. And we uncovered a mailbox that was in the wall right by you. And it hadn't been opened since the 1970s.
No way.
Oh, that's epic.
In the 1970s, this was a mail order begonia shop, and they bought and sold begonias from Belgium.
Wow.
And saying that we're kind of a Belgium-inspired saison brewery.
Oh,
One of the
that's
begonias they bought was Madame Argyle.
Oh my gosh.
And so there's cool things like that.
That's
Another
so
one's called like
incredible.
Alicel, which is where like the grain was originally kind of held in this like unincorporated town in northern northern Oregon called Alicel. And then another one's like Hanami, which is a beer that we do with Sakura Sencha tea, which is cherry blossom tea.
Okay.
And so Hanami is like a Japanese term. So
Okay, gotcha.
we kind of play on all kind of fronts.
Wow, wonderful.
So much creativity.
Plus,
in
you
this
can't
beer.
copyright a name.
Yeah.
That's true. That's true. No cease and desist.
So yeah, they're not always after like an individual person. Like
Yeah.
it's a place, person, or some sort of inspiration behind some either process or ingredient in the beer, what have you. So
Oh, I love that.
it's
Touches like
we
a memory
rely
to
on
it.
a lot of our or like work with a lot of our vendors who helped us get ingredients for the beers, like help name the beers as
Oh,
well.
cool.
So that's kind of a fun process about naming the beers.
Yeah. How about the design for beer labels? Is that in-house?
It's all Andrew,
Yeah,
yeah.
Andrew.
Yeah, so Joshua, who I mentioned earlier, that was doing Gesture King's art and branding. He's the artist behind Gesture King. So as we were home brewing, like I've just known him throughout the years, and so he actually did our original branding package.
Okay.
So it's a big departure from what we think of Gesture King's artwork. And then from then, I've kind of like just ripped off of it and run with it.
Gotcha.
nice.
It's
Did-
beautiful. It's super elegant.
Yeah. Did you take art in school or do any like, or are you just, learning and growing from your own, or did you take any classes?
Yeah, I have a degree in architecture and visual studies.
Okay.
So
That helps.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit of a leg up.
Yeah, so yeah, that's it. And then just kind of run with it and spend time on it. So
Gotcha. So I know, I mean, the building is immaculate. I love the style, the dark wood and the steel, and of course, the black steel. We're big fans of that. But so how long did it take to open the brewery? Because you guys, I think you said you started the process in 2013, 2014, but it sounds like you opened like 2017 or 2018.
yeah, so we opened in 2020, January.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
much
Lucky
longer.
you.
We have impeccable timing.
Yeah, COVID baby.
Yeah.
Congratulations. I'm glad y'all are still here.
We got 6 weeks in of really, really fun tap room energy, and then it all went away.
Yeah, the universe just came and snatched that. It was like, check out this challenge.
Yeah, so we took occupancy December of 2018 of the
Okay.
building. We did most of the construction ourselves, and then tag teamed it with contractor in town that we know of.
Okay.
And so, like, I'll kind of explain what we are, even though you guys can't visually see this.
We'll take pictures.
Thanks.
Post
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. So this is 4 buildings that are all kind of built at different times. And what we did was we kind of unified everything. And the room that we're in now was this really crummy office space with like low acoustical ceiling tiles. And so a lot of what we did in the building throughout the project was subtractive. We ripped everything down. We brought it to the guts and the core.
Okay.
And that's actually one way we approach our beers in terms of designing beers. We're really subtractive in terms of our beers. So it's about simplicity. It's about allowing a few things to really shine and not like trying to throw 100 ingredients at it
Yeah.
or overwhelm your senses. And so that's kind of what we did. And then, yeah, made a few small moves. And like just, we did a lot of intervention, but it looks like it belongs here.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah, before I started, before we opened, and before, I was a brewer here, I was basically a glorified electrician, running conduit. So like, yeah.
Were
like,
you proficient in that before?
No.
Oh, okay.
First time.
Yeah, another great skill of brewers.
One
They'll
of
figure it
our
out.
co-founders, well, both are pretty educated in that realm, so took cues
Yeah.
from them. But yeah, feels like a very long time ago.
Yeah.
So this. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying it's pretty cool that like you got to be a part of that as well. Like you've been able to help see the brewery from the beginning. I know that for you it's huge as well. So it's cool to be an employee and part of that. So
Yeah, I
very
definitely feel like more connected to the space
Yeah.
and can look around and
Yeah, knowing that you put and like worked, and it's like I
Yeah.
helped install these.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Cool. Yeah.
I always like to talk about kind of challenges or workplace obstacles, especially when building a facility. And I'm glad you said electricity. I'll start off by sharing one. When I was at Fort George cleaning kegs, we were moving from Little Miss, Texas, to the big cannery, big production facility, and my boss, Polish is what we call him, was taking apart or kind of shutting down the breakers to the boiler. And I just hear this loud pop, and I see him walk away, and one arm is just like swinging limply, and this other one is like starting to roll a cigarette. And I'm just like, "Are you okay?" He's like, "Oh yeah, I just arced 450 volts or something. I'll feel my arm in like 15 minutes." And that's something where it's like I know brewers pride themselves at figuring out problems and figuring out themselves, but I've also learned that like it's okay to ask for help if
Yeah.
you don't know what you're doing. Yeah,
And safety is key.
So
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be nearly that gnarly, but do you guys have experiences like that you'd like to share in regards to like building this?
A new SOP that was written because of something.
Yeah.
Thankfully, no one got hurt.
Okay.
I don't
Yeah.
even know if we did more than a Band-Aid through the whole job, which is kind of amazing. That was one of my biggest fears when we were doing all the construction, everything from cutting concrete to steel to
Yeah.
electrical stuff. Like there's a lot of opportunity to get hurt, but nope, no one got hurt from Fair Isle. So.
That's
That's
awesome.
good.
Yeah, I guess the biggest obstacle is just a race against time to get this
True.
place open.
Yeah, very
But-
true.
Yeah, for sure. Well, then, there's another question we love to ask? Is there, through this whole process, like y'all have come from, finance, from architecture, home brewing, living in different places. What is a piece of advice that you would give to your younger self at any point in time or at a specific time from what you are today?
You want to leave that?
Yeah, I was thinking about this before.
That's good.
Yeah, I don't. I think there's lots of advice, but at the same time, like, I don't think you can really anticipate the unexpected, and so maybe that's just kind of like be aware for that. Like, so we opened up right before COVID. A lot of people ask me what I would do differently. Like, may not have a global pandemic.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
like, you can't really control that, and so
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of the last few years is trying to realize like what being okay with what you can't control, but also being okay with what you can control.
Okay.
And then kind of really embracing those aspects. Like we can control the type of beer we make, we can control the branding and how it's presented and get people excited about that. And that's what we can control. I feel like trying to like educate myself on like global pandemic business problems isn't even worth it.
Yeah.
Right. Totally. Yeah,
Very
that makes
true.
sense.
For
That's
you?
Yeah, for me, with like my background in finance accounting, I'd say like just change is really hard, right? And like just don't be afraid of that change and what can come out of it. So, I mean, the timing kind of worked out well for me. Like I wish I made the change a little earlier, but I'm very happy with where I'm at and just in my profession from what I was doing previously. So.
Yeah.
Good. It seems that way too. I think people in this industry come from all walks of life, and I think there is something about it's like working with your hands, being creative, and I think working with raw ingredients is super important. There's connection to earth, to farms. I grew up on a farm, so that's like deep for me. But yeah, we're kind of like happy, psychotic people. Like there's not a whole lot in this industry. You don't get paid an exorbitant amount of money for what you do, even though it is similar to fine dining. It's similar to creating this beautiful branded product. But there's so much, I think, mirth and happiness in that when you see somebody enjoying, that beer that you worked and slaved over. Like to me, it's like that'll always fill my cup up. I wish it also overflowed with money, but I think a lot of us do.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, I mean the gratitude I get at the end of the day after like you said, working with my hands, creating this product, versus, when I was in accounting, it was how can I save these people more millions of dollars?
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
it's a complete 180.
Yeah,
It really is.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So speaking of kind of like talking about your branded product, you guys were doing taproom sales, obviously, and then COVID happened. How did you shift into this kind of production model? Did you guys ship beers, or was it simply all to go from here? What did that look like?
Yeah, so in hindsight, one of the really nice things about Fair Isle's business is that we were forced to be really diversified. And we were kind of already kind of gearing up to be set up for that legally without ever knowing that we'd actually need to use that.
Okay.
So if you're not familiar with state liquor laws of Washington, one of the cool parts about Washington, and one of the reasons why we actually wanted to start a brewery here in Washington, was that you can stack liquor laws. And so we are technically a producer. We're also a retailer. So
Oh, okay, nice.
we can sell wine and cider and things like that from kind of around the U.S. The other cool thing too is that we can actually buy directly from any brewery in the state of Washington, and any brewery any brewery in the U.S.
Okay.
can ship beer to us directly.
Oh, wow.
One thing that you can also do in Washington is you can ship directly to consumers. You can do that a long time ago. And so it's super friendly, so we can like stack a bunch of licenses and endorsements on each other. And so we'd actually done that before we even opened, just because why not?
Yeah, just prepping yourself.
Yeah, just prepping yourself.
Yeah.
And then when COVID happened, what it allowed us to quickly do was start basically within like about a month or two, we built out a shop website. And so we actually started shipping directly to consumers throughout Washington. The other thing that we were able to do was help a bunch of friends out in different breweries across the U.S. Like a ship beer directly to us. So we started
nice.
selling a bunch of Just King beer and scratch brewing.
Very cool.
We started buying like Highland Park beer directly. And so a lot of people who just had a lot of like product sitting around without outlets, right?
Gotcha.
We were able to just start buying that. So we would just we would buy pallets of the guest beers.
Oh,
And so everybody's still trying to figure out what to do. And then quickly we started distributing to different states as well. One reason why we started doing that was just the seasonality of Washington. So we're really busy in the Pacific Northwest in the summer, really slow in the shoulder seasons, right? And then looking at like growing up from Texas and in the South's really busy on the shoulder seasons.
Yeah.
Really slow what we picture in the summer. And so we're able to kind of like even out our sales a little bit by shipping to a bunch of states. And so now that as we're growing, you'll have like seasonality changes, you'll have fluctuations with the economy, and we're able to kind of like weather that a little bit more because we do ship to, half a dozen or more states right now. We do have DTC. We do have like a bottle membership called the Knitting Circle. We have all these kind of factors of sales, so we're not relying upon just our tap room.
Yeah.
Oh,
So if your
that's
tap
super
room has a
smart.
bad month, it's not the end of the world, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's super smart.
That's so wild. I didn't know you could do all that.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. Yeah. So, any new projects other than the one that y'all just did on Monday? Anything else that you're super excited about or that's coming in the near future? I know it's about to be really nice, beautiful weather. So, if y'all are gearing up for a lot of patio parties or something like that.
Yeah, we're always, I mean, this is a question I could go on forever. Like, we're always working on exciting new products, exploring new ingredients. Like I mentioned earlier, like the shiso leaf is something we're very excited about. We've recently, so koji is something we've been really interested in for a while.
Okay, what's koji?
It's essentially, it's a
We're
mold.
learning too.
Yeah.
Okay, it's a mold.
Yeah, it's a mold. So
Oh, it's used for making sake, I believe.
correct. Yeah.
Okay,
So
yeah.
it's how you make sake, miso, like
Gotcha.
a lot of Japanese culinary
Okay, gotcha.
uses. But essentially, you're like going through the sacrification process with like say rice to make sake. So you're getting alpha amylase enzymes. They're like similar like what's in barley, right? And so people are exploring with the concept of, in a way, bypassing the malting process and using
okay.
koji, inoculated barley. We've connected with a local sake producer actually here in Ballard that makes really nice sake, and that's like the most exciting, like kind of new,
That is really
weird
cool.
thing we're exploring to see if that can work.
Yeah.
Whether it's koji inoculated rice or whether we can inoculate some barley and actually mash with that and brew and what that
Oh,
looks
wow,
like.
that's super
So
exciting. That's
probably
super
the
interesting.
like the biggest thing from like an R&D perspective we're going through right now that like really excites me. Then we started making lager about a year ago in addition to saison. So up until like this time a year ago, we were exclusively mixed culture saison. So lagers for us are still new, exciting. We stick with the same ethos of using all local ingredients. So it's with local malt, most of the time with local hops as well. And so really kind of expanding our offerings there. We just started canning recently, and
Oh, nice.
so that's like a big area of growth for us right
How
now.
has canning been going?
Great, yeah.
Great.
We work with Cascadia Canning, so local folks that come in and kind of pop up their canning operation, and yeah, it's great
We've
working
seen
with
them
them.
around.
Yeah,
yeah.
they're good people.
Great folks. We're one of the few folks that are can conditioning for saison, so that was like a fun process to work with them to see what that looked like to make that work, and yeah, it's
Had
been
they done that before, or was that new for them?
It was new for them.
I think it was new for them. Yeah.
Okay.
Nice.
So, yeah, and like kind of the biggest thing with that is really like dialing in your weight, so there's enough like headspace for re-fermentation in
Exactly.
the can and all that. So, yeah, and we haven't really had any hiccups with that. So it's
That's
been great.
exciting. We did that at Steeplejack, and it took a couple trials for getting the right blend of like sugar, like how much to use for that re-fermentation. Like I was telling Andrew earlier, we definitely had some pallets of cans that were like real taut. And it's like, okay, we might
Yeah,
let
so you
these
indulge in a little bit.
exactly just let them sit in the cooler, hopefully they'll chill
Yeah,
out.
I mean, luckily we're able to take a lot of our practices from, conditioning saison in bottles
Yeah.
and just apply that to cans, just knowing that the seams in the cans just aren't rated for as
Yeah,
much
yeah.
pressure. So just dialing that back a little bit, and it's worked out great.
Good. That'll be
so
super
cool.
exciting to see.
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate you guys having us on. It's been a great conversation.
Anything else y'all would like to share or put in before we end the podcast?
Yeah, I'm just overflowed and excited.
Yeah.
So I'm just like,
Yeah. I mean, I can talk saison all day. So
there you go. Anything, Andrew?
No, especially you guys did a great job.
Yeah, I guess we're just especially trying to like push the boundary of what saison can be, and that's like what really excites us. Yeah, so
That's very exciting.
Perfect.
see what other
Well,
new
please,
ingredients we can
if
come up
people
with.
out there, please come up in Ballard,
Yeah.
see Fair Isle, try their beer, sit and talk to these lovely people. I mean, I'm sure just besides
Learn.
you, everybody else
I
here
want
is
to come and
just as
just
splendid.
sit and listen to all the different ingredients that y'all use. That's one thing. I'm like, I just want to hear
Yeah.
about what
Well, where do
they
you guys
are.
get your malt from now? That I'm assuming, did you guys use Skagit before? And that's a shame that they had to close.
Yeah.
Where do you guys find and source your malt?
Mostly Link Malt now
Oh, okay,
on the
Link.
eastern side of the state.
Yeah.
Like, so their malting facilities in Spokane. They're a cooperative, so they work. It's a really cool thing about that company is they're like farmer owned
Yeah.
as well. So a lot of the farms are in Washington. If not, they're like right across the border in Idaho.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So it's all Pacific Northwest, and yeah, they work with a variety of farmers. And so every year they do an event called Grain Maker, which is pretty rad. So we go out there and connect with the farmers, and it's all around barley harvest. So
Oh, wonderful. So you
yeah,
get to be
so
there for harvest.
yeah, right now it's a lot of Link Malt. We'll see what happens with up in Skagit Valley if someone else takes that over.
Yeah,
There's
I
some
really
other
hope
smaller
so.
folks that are just up and running that, yeah, we'll probably use one day. But yeah,
And we could always use more craft malt serves.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you guys for coming on.
Thank y'all so
Really
much.
appreciate it.